And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, this is November the 5th, 309th day of the year. Just 56 days remain to the year's over with when we get to start a new year. Holidays and observances. National Stress Awareness Day. American Football Day. National Love Your Red Hair Day. Eating Healthy Day. National Advent Calendar Day. National Chinese Takeout Day. Wobbly Wednesday. For those who are not familiar with that, it's a special day dedicated to raising awareness of nystagmus. Condition causes people's eyes to move uncontrollably, making things look blurry. Imagine trying to read or even recognize a friend's face when your eyes won't stay still. It can be quite an interesting situation. International Sweater Festival, World Tsunami Awareness Day, Bonfire Night, annual spectacle marked by crackling flames and brilliant displays in the night sky. Historic plot remembered with reverence. Kartika Purnima, that is a vibrant celebration observed on the full moon day of the Kartika month in the Hindu lunar calendar. Highly significant in both Hindu and Jain traditions. On this particular day, the moon shines at its brightest, symbolizing purity and inner light. Children's Book Week, National Medical Cannabis Week, Marzipan Week, Rad Tech Week, Pushcart Camel Fair. If you want to buy a camel, this is where I recommend you go. National Animal Shelter Appreciation Week, Drowsy Driving Prevention Week, Yaping Lantern Festival. It's a celebrated in northern Thailand. Captivating spectacle in which thousands of glowing lanterns ascend into the night sky. So primarily in Chiang Mai, the event's more than just a visual treat. It's a celebration of hope and renewal. And a lot of those are routinely mistaken for UFOs. Pomegranate Festival, Artes Mundi, National Patient Transport Week, National Fig Week, Polar Bear Week, World Communication Week, Cuckoo Dancing Week, Great British Game Week for the adventurous foodie. Nothing quite like trying new and delicious meats. Talk Money Week and Number Confidence Week. Famous people born on this date: Odell Beckham Jr., Sam Rockwell, Kris Jenner, and Kevin Jonas. Well, now let's see what's in the news. Last night, this country took a turn to the left with a communist elected as the mayor of New York City. Clinton, celebrating the Democratic victories as socialist Mamdani sets to take control of America's biggest city. The Fox News is called New York City for Mamdani. Virginia went for Spanberger. And New Jersey went for the Democrat. Mickey Sherrill got the New Jersey governorship. Defeated Republican Jack Ciattarelli. California Proposition 50, dubbed the Election Rigging Response Act, passed after being placed on the ballot. Democrats maintain control of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court as Justice Christine Donahue, Kevin Daughtry, and David Wecht won their re-election campaigns on election night. And White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt claimed on Tuesday during a press briefing that the mail-in ballots are being filled out with other people's names, including the names of illegal immigrants in California. Of course, Hillary Clinton jumping up and down, biggest cheerleader for Mamdani's win and other Democratic election victories. We'll see how all this plays out. Well, Erica Kirk reflects on life, loss, and faith in the first TV interview since Charlie Kirk's death. She is opened up to Fox News' Jesse Waters in her first interview. Shares what life's been like in the wake of tragedy and why she refuses to live in fear. She says it's a fearlessness that's rooted in understanding I'll have my day and my time, whatever that is, when the Lord knows that I've completed my mission and I'm not afraid. Well, you just have to remember to duck. Well, with Mom Dami having been elected, supposedly there's a hidden reason for his election, and it's not what most folks would think. He just became mayor of New York City. He's a self-described socialist. A lot of folks say he's a communist. To some, it sounds like proof that the far left has actually taken over the system, but apparently that's not what happened. He didn't win because New York City suddenly fell in love with socialism. He supposedly won because he captured something every politician should be listening to right now. A frustration that the system doesn't feel fair anymore, and it certainly does not. I've dealt with judges here who don't even bother to hold court because they've already made up their minds. It's a frustration that isn't confined to struggling families or low-income voters. It's also spreading among people who are doing just fine. Educated, ambitious, uply mobile professionals supposed to be living the dream, but can't shake the feeling they're falling behind. Well, Governor Abbott vows to impose a 100% tariff on anybody moving from New York City to Texas after Election Day. Abbott's a Republican, made that announcement on Monday, day before New Yorkers headed to the polls to choose a new mayor in what's become a closely watched race between Democratic nominee Mamdani, a socialist, who actually has won, and former Governor Andrew Cuomo. We'll see if he follows through with his threat. Well, there's been a question being asked, when did MAGA become Make Argentina Great Again? May 19th, President Trump's Department of Agriculture unveiled its so-called Farmers First policy initiative with an aggressive marketing campaign. There was a press conference with Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, a social media campaign promoting the initiative, and a glossy pamphlet trumpeting the hard work and dignity of America's family farmers. 5 months later, America's farmers are collateral damage in the administration's worldwide trade war. We'll see what comes of all this. There's a talk about importing Argentine beef instead of using locally grown beef. Well, AOC says Trump stopped MTG's potential Senate run, sparking her revenge tour against the GOP. MTG is actually Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she told The View it's okay, Trump and she disagrees. According to AOC, who of course knows all, President Trump blocked Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, from running for Georgia's Senate seat last year. A move, she says, prompted Greene to go on a revenge tour against the GOP. Well, we'll see what comes of all that. Well, smoking's been banned for an entire generation under a sweeping new national law. Anybody living in the Maldives born after January 1st, 2007 is going to be affected by the first ever generational smoking ban. On November, excuse me, on November 1st, this new law, proposed by the country's president, Mohamed Muzu, earlier this year, took effect in that country, banning an entire generation from smoking, buying, or even using tobacco. In a press release, the Ministry of Health called it a historic milestone in the nation's effort to protect public health and promote a tobacco-free generation. And this ban applies to all forms of tobacco, And retailers are required to verify the age of users prior to making a sale. It also maintains a complete ban on the import, sale, distribution, possession, and use of electronic cigarettes and vaping products, regardless of the age of the user. Well, there's a video that shows a catastrophic UPS plane disaster that killed at least 7 and injured 11. It's a plane loaded with fuel crashed at Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport on Tuesday, produced a massive and deadly fireball. There was a video taken from inside a vehicle on a nearby road, shows a huge plume of black and gray smoke towering in the sky. The driver in that vehicle where the footage was filmed can be heard shouting in shock as the flames billow and consume what remains of the aircraft on the runway, with another plane visible in front of it. Fireball expanded rapidly, rippling through the air as emergency sirens began to wail. Well, there's a New York City election fears drove a 100 million plus Florida real estate surge as nervous New Yorkers fled south. Miami developer reported twice last year's volume from New York City buyers concerned about Mamdani's platform. The election anxiety in New York City turned into a real estate windfall in South Florida. See how many of them come to Texas and pay that tariff. Well, sex spies from China, Russia, hit the U.S. to seduce and steal secrets from honeypot tactics, former operative claims. Former CIA operative says that China and Russia are sending sex spies to the U.S. with goals of stealing the country's technology and state secrets as they engage in what he's called psychological warfare. J. Michael Waller told Fox News he's seen firsthand how America's biggest adversaries, like China and Russia, are using honeypot tactics to steal secrets and compromise politicians as a dirty way to stay ahead of the U.S. He's been working for the CIA in Poland. He said during that time he saw a Chinese woman about 25 approach him and seemed interested in the work he was doing. After talking with her, he realized she was a spy and reported the woman to Polish authorities. She was a government employee at that time. He says the Polish government threw her out of the country within days. And he says the Chinese spy knew about his background already, and even stuff that wasn't in his official bio for the event. Well, let's see. New York City socialist candidate Zohran Mamdani cruised to victory Tuesday night, defied the laundry list of critics who railed against him over several high-profile controversial stances and statements. Even though many call him a communist, he's dismissed that, maintained he's a democratic socialist. I don't know that there's that much difference. Now, Senate Democrats an exit from the record-breaking shutdown as pressure intensifies on them. A lot of people unhappy about the under-SNAP benefits. There are several offers from Senate Republicans that have been made since the beginning of the shutdown, which crept into record-breaking territory Tuesday night. Among the options, Senate Leader Chuck Schumer and his caucus mulled over a vote on expiring Obamacare subsidies, attaching a host of spending bills to the government funding extension, and extending the House Press Continued Resolution until December or January. But Schumer is standing his ground. Until he gets what he wants, the government's going to stay closed. Anti-Trump messaging prevailed for Democrats in the election night sweep. Trump derangement syndrome is still holding firm. Well, according to David Marcus, the GLP has to nuke the filibuster because Democrats will if they get the chance. This argument pops up every few years whenever one of our political parties controls the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Should they end the 60-vote Senate threshold known as the filibuster to advance their agenda? It's no longer just a majority. It's now 60. Well, a Colorado college student vows to fight back after student board blocks the TPUSA chapter for his university. He's fighting back after school student government blocked his effort to start a Turning Point USA chapter. He calls that an attack on free expression. He says they have a lot of people in the background that are saying they'd love to sponsor us to do a lawsuit, but he's trying to do it the Christian way and go little by little, like go up the chain. This is a senior at Fort Lewis College. His name is Flynn. Well, Oklahoma State conservative students are pressed charges that demand accountability after harassment at their table. Student leaders from Young America's Foundation at Oklahoma State University are speaking out following heated confrontations that left their table trashed during 4 interactions in one day with the same individual. Fox News spoke with Young America's Foundation Chairman Thomas Hatfield and Vice Chairman Caleb Buxton about the incident. Students explain what happened and why they believe it's dangerous for those on the left to freely describe conservatives as fascists and why they think leftists have been brainwashed. They were holding a table in support of traditional marriage last week and hoping to conduct a productive debate. Then an individual approached them from an anti-Israel table nearby and just really had a meltdown. After that first incident, they didn't think the person would come back, but that wasn't the case. Came back several times. Well, ex-Prince Andrew is vulnerable to criminal charges after losing his royal protection status. He's more vulnerable than ever to possible legal punishment for his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. This claim was made by multiple royal experts who spoke to Fox News about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former royal who's been once hailed as Queen Elizabeth II's favorite son. King Charles III has stripped his disgraced brother of his royal titles, evicted him from the palatial royal lodge after weeks of pressure to act over Andrew's relationship with Epstein. And now he's vulnerable to charges being made against him, according to British broadcaster and photographer Helena Chard. Not having a good day, all in all. Well, a hunter survives nearly 2 weeks stranded in California wilderness after his truck gets stuck. He's an experienced hunter, vanished in the California wilderness for 20 days. Been found alive by another group of hunters in what authorities are calling nothing short of a miracle. Selma resident Ron Daly, 65, was discovered Saturday along the Swamp Lake Trail in the Sierra National Forest. He has an underlying medical condition, been missing since October 13th when he failed to return from a hunting trip near Shaver Lake, prompted a massive search and rescue operation. He went 6 days without food as his legs began to give out. That's according to his wife, Glenda. He says he's since received medical treatment. Well, a suspected thief hit almost 24 Target stores trying to steal, of all things, Legos. He's suspected of being part of an organized retail theft ring spanning Texas and Oklahoma. He was arrested on Friday, suspected of shoplifting from nearly 24 Target stores across Texas, primarily, as I say, for Lego merchandise. 28-year-old Winston Love allegedly stole from 23 Target stores over the past 2 months in 14 cities, mostly around Dallas, with the thefts totaling more than $37,000. He was later found to have 8 outstanding warrants and some illegal narcotics, also suspected of being part of a larger theft ring spanning Texas and Oklahoma, targeting tens of thousands of dollars worth of Lego products. Well, Stephen Colbert insists he's more conservative than people might think. He's not a leftist by any means, he says. Speaking to GQ's Zach Barron in an interview published Monday, he talked about his work on the show and its recent cancellation last summer. He's frequently attacked President Trump and Republicans, but he told Barron that the audience demographics for his show were split evenly among Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. He's just misunderstood. Well, daylight saving reform has hit a wall as lawmakers blast outdated practices. Americans just turned their clocks back again for daylight savings time, and Representative Vern Buchanan, Republican of Florida, says it's time to make it the last time. He says it's clear Americans want to do away with changing their clocks twice a year, and his bill is going to end that outdated practice. We'll see if it comes to anything. LSU interim AD firmly shuts down Nick Saban's coaching rumors. Say it's not going to happen. There's a spotlight shining over Death Valley as the LSU Tigers search for the next head football coach. While an Ed Orgeron reunion had been ruled out just yet, interim athletic director Verge Ashbury did cross one name off the list. He said Nick Saban is not going to happen. Not on his watch. Well, Tom Brady's made an interesting revelation. His beloved dog is actually a clone of his late pet, Loa. As the NFL trade deadline was approaching, legendary quarterback Tom Brady was interviewed. The 7-time Super Bowl champion quarterback and current Fox Sports broadcaster said in a statement Tuesday from a company he's invested in that his dog, Junie, is a clone of his late dog, Lua. That's a fascinating prospect, of course. Let's see. Wayfair is kicking off a Black Friday savings event early. And as I said yesterday, major pizza chains are having trouble as food delivery apps the costs are eating into their profits. And Pawn Stars boss Rick Harrison calling out the Vegas pricing. He says it's ticking people off, and that's one reason that the casinos are not full as they usually have been at this time in the past. You know, Hooters is revamping the menu, updating the uniforms. The original owners have taken back over, and they're going to put it back to what it was. Well, midterm advice for Republicans. Take a bold strategy to match Trump's momentum. Voters are hungry for more of the bold moves and tangible wins the Trump administration has delivered so far. To retain and even expand midterm majorities, the legislative branches have to shift gears. Well, we'll see what happens. Midterm is next year. Well, liberal outlets are criticizing Trump officials that have been relocated to military housing after receiving a lot of threats and harassment. Some senior Trump administration officials reportedly moved into the Washington, D.C. area military housing amid heightened harassment threats. Moved at strong criticism from left-leaning media outlets because they can't get to them. Atlantic reported last week White House Deputy Chief of Staff and Policy Stephen Miller and his family recently relocated to military housing after facing ongoing protests outside their home in Arlington, Virginia. Noted at least 6 other senior Trump officials have taken similar action, several citing safety concerns for themselves and their families. You know, this anger at losing the election is just getting really out of control. Well, there's a mother who's pleading for her college student who has vanished on Halloween just minutes from home. Authorities are searching for a 19-year-old college student in South Carolina who went missing minutes from his home on Halloween, but hadn't been seen since. Charleston Police Department said Owen Tillman Kinney last seen walking into the Ravenel Bridge pedestrian walkway just after 3 o'clock in the morning. Police initially said he was last seen wearing a Boston Celtics jersey, but later said he's wearing a black hooded jacket, black colored pants, and black Nike sneakers with white soles. He's 6'1", weighs 155 pounds, a student at college at Charleston. And his phone's last location was also recorded at the Ravenel Bridge. He was minutes from getting to his home, but never got there. And a cross-dressing porch pirate was nabbed after allegedly being caught on camera stealing packages off people's porches. The dressing up in women's clothes was supposed to be a disguise. Didn't quite work out that way. Todd Anthony Bond, 46, taken into custody Friday after the Mobile County Sheriff's Office released video of an individual dressed in women's clothing arriving at a home in a black Ford Escape, stealing packages from a nearby home in an attempt to track down the suspect. That one of the things to help solve the crime, according to a spokesperson for the county sheriff's office, was the vehicle in question. You need to cover your license if you're going to use a vehicle. Of course, here, when somebody vandalized my wife's car, and we caught it on the camera, and it even showed the license plate, our local Gestapo couldn't find that car. Had no idea who it was. Well, a classmate of Prince William and Kate Middleton's college days is dead after a 100-foot rooftop fall. He was a British reality star and a socialite, also a classmate of Prince William and Kate Middleton during their college days. Died Thursday after a fall from a rooftop. He was on the roof of a building in Cockspur Street in Westminster. It was 11:02 on Thursday evening, October 30th. And he fell. Despite the best efforts from the London ambulance service, he was pronounced dead at the scene. His death was unexpected, but not suspicious. The fall was about 100 feet. You know, the thing to do if you fall from that height right before you hit, jump up. Well, you know, we've been talking about a lot of off-the-wall things. Ghost, paranormal, first responder interactions with the paranormal. We're going to turn from talking about urban locations, talking about ghosts who seem to like the forest and the woods. When you think about that, you imagine towering trees and sunshine scattered by leafy branches, plants of all shapes and sizes, woodland animals running around. But there are actually numerous forests and woods around the globe that have actually developed a reputation for being haunted. If you choose to visit one of these forests, you might experience encounters with all type of ghosts. Some of them hundreds of years old. Spanish conquistadors clutching heavy swords and looking for the King's Highway. There's also been long dead Royal Air Force officers wandering among the trees looking for their lost plane. And there's a story of a grieving mother digging up the remains of her dead baby. Or maybe a headless boy, just as active and hyper in death as in life. These are some of the experiences you can expect in some of the haunted forests that we're going to talk about. You know, most forests are relatively quiet, but a haunted forest can produce the pounding of a ghostly horse's hooves or the yells of a young man murdered 100 years ago, or chants in a strange and almost inhuman language. And there's other sounds heard as well, moans and sobs and screams and sounds of animals being slaughtered, all without any physical explanation. And depending on what goes on inside the forest, the sounds may be those of a ghost or unsuspecting hikers encountering a spirit or an entity. Shouldn't come as a surprise that forests would be haunted, given how long they've stood on the earth and how many scenes of history have played out under those trees. We're going to start out talking about a place in India, Dal Hill Forest, area of Kurseong, a hill station, near Darjeeling in the West Bengal state of India. Considered one of the area's most haunted regions in India. Paranormal activity that occurs includes the entire hill station, but primarily centers on the forest. No doubt these ghostly manifestations are associated with the many murders said to have been committed in the forest during days gone by. Imagine, if you will, walking through your typical forest. You hear the sounds of birds and animals, and when suddenly you sense there's somebody else behind you. Feeling of being watched is so unmistakable you turn to look behind you, but you're alone. and what you see isn't necessarily what you would expect. You try to clear what you figure must be blurry vision, and you realize what you're looking at. Walking up behind you is a young boy without a head on his shoulders. Keeps walking straight toward you, undeterred even after you let out a blood-curdling scream and turn and run for your life. And unfortunately, if the experience isn't over yet, as the days go by, you keep feeling as if you're being watched, even while you're lying alone in your bed at night. Torment and depression are the best words to describe your existence after this encounter. You find that you live in fear, still sensing his presence, and you can't decide which is worse. Seeing his headless body walking toward you, or just sensing the non-existent eyes watching you. In some instances, this leads to tragic suicide. A lot of folks have seen this headless boy in the downhill forest, and others have encountered him in the neighboring roads or running into the forest. It's said once you've seen him, you'll never be able to forget him. Now, the forest itself is said to be quite beautiful, filled with towering trees that have no doubt seen a lot of years pass. And as you walk deeper into the forest, it grows a bit darker. Out of the corner of your eye, you see a solitary red eye peering at you from a dense clump of trees. It blinks and it's gone. And you decide it's merely a trick of the light. You feel very strongly somebody's watching you, but it doesn't seem to be the headless boy this time. Can't shake that feeling as you repeatedly stop to look around or call out a greeting. But you don't see anybody, and there's no response to your greetings beyond the typical songs of birds sitting in the trees. Evening draws near. You find yourself near the Victoria Boys Hostel. Middle of the summer, and premises is obviously devoid of life till you hear the blood-curdling shriek of a child, and you decide it's time for you to move on. Well, the sun is beginning to set when you see a woman ahead of you dressed in dark gray clothes. You don't really get a clear look at her, but her movement suggests she's in distress. You call out to see if you can help, but she doesn't seem to hear you. And just as you catch up to her, she vanishes. No reasonable explanation for where she could have gone, and when you look back, the only footprints you see are your own. That's when you remember the story you heard earlier about the gray lady that haunts that forest. Well, by this time it's getting dark. You've been advised nobody hangs out in the forest at night. So you make your way back, but you have the distinct impression you're being followed. As darkness overtakes, you realize how very cold and damp this forest is. Step into an area filled with a dense mist, and to your horror, a woman's scream echoes among the trees. You turn toward the scream, and you see a woman running out of a clump of trees right in front of you. She's coming straight at you. Your breath comes in gasps as you run toward a nearby road. And when you get to the road, you stop and look behind you, and you're alone. Quickly, you make your way out of that forest. If you should pay a visit to Downhill Forest, don't be surprised if you should catch sight of a headless boy, either stalking you or walking along one of the many roads into the forest. A lot of different folks have seen him. In the forest, at a minimum, you'll sense an eerie presence and feel as if you're being watched. And you might hear disturbing shrieks or screams, but nobody's ever reported to have been caught by the ladies that haunt the forest. Or at least they haven't lived to tell about it. Well, let's go to Japan. The Aokigahara Forest, also known as Jukai, or the Sea of Trees. It's an unusual forest with a sad reputation. It's said to be Japan's suicide forest. Otherwise picturesque forest rises at the foot of the majestic Mount Fuji, location of about 100 suicides a year. Second most popular suicide location in the world. Surprisingly enough, the most popular suicide location in the world is actually Golden Gate Bridge. These suicides at the Aokigahara Forest began in the 1950s and continue to this very day. Some blame the suicides on the presences of demons in the forest. Others point to the dense magnetic iron deposits beneath it that affect electronics and compasses and GPSs, and many say it affects your mind. Others claim the cause is confusion from wandering in the maze-like walls of dense trees that muffle sounds and disorient those unfamiliar with the forest. In fact, the coverage in this forest is so dense, even on a sunny day, you'd be hard-pressed to find a bright spot. Other common sights, brightly colored tape or string that hikers who aren't planning to die in the forest use to keep track of their path as they wander into this labyrinth of trees. Picture, if you will, entering a forest so quiet the only sounds you hear are the crunching of your feet on the forest floor or the sounds of your own breathing. And unfortunately, that seems oddly loud and almost like a roaring in the silence surrounding you on all sides. Beneath your feet's a bed of lava, rich in nutrients, the result of a 10-day eruption of Mount Fuji. You don't hear any of the normal forest sounds, and in fact, you hardly encounter any wildlife at all. As you continue to wonder, you begin to feel claustrophobic, and you could swear you see motion out of the corners of your eyes. But if you did, footsteps certainly made no sound unlike yours. Seems almost as if somebody's watching you, but there's nobody around to watch you. At least nobody you can see. As you get deeper into the forest, you begin to notice some disturbing things. A time-worn suicide note is tacked to a tree along the path you're following. You come across somebody's belongings that are spilled out of a backpack. A shoe, some clothes, a dead smartphone. And deeper inside the forest, you encounter the bones of a human that have been scattered by wild animals you haven't seen yet. Along the way, you see signs trying to discourage visitors from thoughts of suicide, even providing a helpline number they can call for free counseling. But you quickly make your way back out of the forest after you discover a body hanging from a tree. Well-dressed young man suspended by the neck. Body's clearly a few days old, still swinging by a rope back and forth, even though there's no breeze. One visitor to the forest was Rob Gilhooly, who had to be a writer for the Japan Times. That's the largest Japanese newspaper to date. He was exploring the forest when he heard a petrifying, hair-raising scream he assumed could only come from a living individual. Made his way to the side of the scream, expecting to find somebody suffering. Instead, he found a decaying body that was several weeks old. The only source for that scream he could figure was the spirit associated with the body. Countless visitors to the forest have heard blood-curdling screams, never figured out where they came from. Considering the density of the woods and its relatively silence, the sounds of such screams have to be truly terrifying. Numerous visitors to the forest have seen white smoky objects appear in the air and then vanish just as quickly as though even though there's no fog or mist present. A group of investigators from Destination Truth managed to capture this phenomenon on digital video. Later tests showed it hadn't been tampered with and the images were real. Others reported seeing figures of pale women in very thin, wispy hair wearing white robes roaming through the forest. Who or what they might be remains another one of the mysteries. Mention of colored tape or string is a common sight in Aokigahara for those who've entered the forest with every intention of coming back out alive again. Imagine you're one of those hikers. Maybe you came to investigate one of the many stunning caves that are said to lie deep inside the forest. You bought some sturdy, bright yellow tape to make sure you make your way out and begin your adventure. You find the cave, maybe the beautiful ice cave, and get ready to retrace your steps back. You begin, but after about 45 minutes, you discover someone or something cut your guiding tape. You manage to keep going without panicking and begin to look for the other end of your tape, except somebody's removed it. Fortunately for you, you managed to make your way out alive again after many hours. Well, the Japanese believe in instances like this, the tape was cut by a spirit referred to as the yurei, meaning dim ghost. The yurei are believed to be the souls of people who died with a deep anger, hatred, grief, or longing for revenge. And due to the strong negative emotions, their death doesn't release them from this world. In fact, it condemns them to wonder. Japanese legend states during famine times, the sick, feeble, or elderly were brought to Aokigahara Forest by their family members and left there to die a slow, torturous death of exposure or starvation. And this was justified, supposedly, by a need to feed the healthy family members who were likely to survive the famine if they could just get enough food. Those left to die in the forest turned into yurei upon death, and a lot of folks believe that's why this particular forest is so filled with despondency and death. Even the current caretakers of the forest seem to believe in the yurei. When bodies of suicidal visitors are retrieved from the forest, they're typically kept overnight before being sent to the proper authorities out of necessity. One of the forest caretakers will spend the night with the bodies, believing if the bodies are left all alone, the yurei associate them with a scream all through the night. Some of the locals insist the spirits of those who committed suicide within the forest call out to one another, drawing them to their death. Some go further and say only those who are destined to die there can succeed in a suicide attempt. You see, not all suicide attempts are actually successful. In one instance, a nearby shop owner discovered a woman hanging from the tree that should have been most definitely dead, but she wasn't. She was choking on the rope she tried to hang herself with, and her eyes were protruding from her face, but she didn't die. Needless to say, he cut her down and helped her obtain medical treatment. According to legend, it just wasn't her place to die within the Aokigahara forest. One young couple exploring the forest began to feel claustrophobic, which isn't uncommon in a dense forest. Feeling kept growing stronger until they nearly panicked. Together, they made a quick decision to leave immediately, following the tape they'd used to mark their trail. And as they turned back the way they had come, the trees actually seemed to be even denser. As they began to walk, the couple said it felt as if the trees had come alive and were reaching out to grasp them. Now, whether this was a trick of the mind or they certainly don't plan on coming back to the Aokigahara. Some say it's a kindly orange-robed Buddhist monk that resides within the forest. Others say he's a spirit and not a man. Regardless of his actual nature, he's actually been a lifesaver to many folks. Not only does he show up just in time to help lost hikers, he's also succeeded in talking a lot of suicidal forest visitors out of their tragic plans and discourages visitors from taking pictures of the forest. But there's one interesting aspect to this story. Nobody ever remembers seeing this particular monk outside of the confines of the forest. So if you have severe depression or suicidal thoughts, it would be wise for you not to visit this particular forest. Nobody should plan to explore it alone. Remember, a lot of visitors with no intention of committing suicide have still killed themselves. And make sure you leave a careful trail so you can find your way back. Undoubtedly, something very dark, malicious dwelling in this densely wooded area, and it or they shouldn't be trifled with. Now, another interesting location is actually in the U.S. Pine Barrens, New Jersey. The United States' first national reserve was the Pine Barrens, also known as the Pine Lands. Heavily forested area extended over 1 million acres in several counties in the southern part of New Jersey. The name Barrens refers to the sandy, acidic soil that makes it hard for traditional crops to grow. But it seems to be just what the pine trees love. Areas largely rural, remnants of villages from years past can be found deep inside its confines. This beautiful forested area is known for far more than just its diversity of trees and wildlife. Its most famous paranormal residence, the infamous Jersey Devil. But he's all that haunts the Pine Barrens, besides carnivorous plants. Now, the story of the Jersey Devil goes back to the 1700s. Deborah Leeds was pregnant with her 13th child in 1735. Her pregnancy left her weary and worn out as she cared for her children and an alcoholic husband. In a moment of desperation, she cursed the unborn child. Some claim she says, "Let this one be a devil." Well, when that unlucky 13th child was born, it seems the devil took Deborah up on her promise. Birth was difficult, and when the child was born, the midwife was terrified. The child was born with hands and feet shaped like hooves, and some say it even had a leather pair of wings sprouting from between its tiny shoulders, and his head looked more like a goat than a human. It said the child wrestled free from the midwife and flew up the chimney before its mother could get a good look at it. They claimed they could hear his hooves tapping on the roof as he ran back and forth, which is when the killing actually started. For over 350 years, something living in the Pine Barrens brutally kills livestock and scares a lot of residents and visitors. Modern descriptions of this creature stalking the woods all describe it as a humanoid creature with leathery wings, glowing red eyes, a horse-like head, and a terrifying cry. Napoleon Bonaparte's brother actually witnessed a sighting, and one time there were over 100 sightings in such a short span that local schools were closed to keep the children safe. To this day, nobody knows what it is, but there are a lot of folks who swear they've encountered it. So if you ever find yourself lost in the Pine Barrens, a very kind African-American gentleman may come to assist you. He knows that area extremely well and is very skilled at treating medical problems and wounds. But you'll discover before long that your Good Samaritan is actually the ghost of a medical doctor named James Still, who died in the late 1800s. For a good part of his life, he wasn't allowed to freely practice medicine because of his color and decided to move into the Pine Barrens to study medicine and herbal remedies undisturbed. Later on, Dr. Still had his own medical office and was a valued member of the community. He hadn't let death stop him from his desire to help the sick and show compassion for those around him, no. In the Atco area of the Pine Barrens, there's said to have been numerous sightings of the ghost of a small boy running into the road after his ball. A lot of folks have swerved and slammed on the brakes, certain there was no impact, but convinced the child couldn't have escaped unscathed. But when they searched the road for him, he's nowhere to be seen. They don't find a ball, they don't find footprints, they don't find anything. There's also the tragic story of a commonly cited ghost, simply known as the Woman in White. She perished on her wedding night alongside her dearly beloved. Apparently they were parted in death, and she spent year after year searching for him. She's usually seen peering into windows on the second floor or higher, I might add. Well, the Pine Barren is a massive forested area filled with trees and plants and wildlife and some very interesting ghosts. Whether you see the ghost boy run after his ball in front of your car, the beautiful bride still searching for her groom, or the Jersey's devil himself, just remember there's a good chance that a phantom doctor with very real skills will show up just in time to help you out. Well, from New Jersey, let's turn to Romania. The Hoia Forest, been called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. That's just one of the other names given to the Hoia Forest, also known as the Hoia Baciu Forest, near Cluj-Napoca in Romania. Truly a fascinating forest with everything from trees bent and curved and downright unnatural shapes to repeated UFO sightings beginning in the 1960s and even mysterious paranormal phenomena. Compared to some of the other forests discussed in various shows, this is relatively small at just 3 square kilometers. It's a beautiful, dense forest with a variety of wildlife and an ominous circular clearing near the center of it. How many folks have responded to the forest seems to vary widely. Nausea, vomiting, unexpected rashes, migraines, panic attacks, odd pains, and even amnesia are just a few of the symptoms folks have complained about. Some people return mysterious burns or severe scratches on their skin. Even recorded incidents of people losing track of time while in the forest. Some in there feel they're being watched, and when they come back, there's nobody there. Others feel there's something they instinctively describe as a creature stalking with a malicious intent. Apparently something or someone in the forest enjoys making electronics act up, including smartphones and GPS systems. Photographs, both digital and film, reveal shapes and forms of people not visible in the images were taken. Been a lot of disappearances associated with that forest over the years. Most disconcerting is of a little girl who wandered away from her family and was lost in the forest. The family, the officials, and volunteers launched a massive and thorough search for us, but to no avail. She was assumed dead despite the fact her body was never found. Well, go fast forward 5 years, and out of the forest comes a 5-year-old girl wearing the exact same clothes of the girl who disappeared. They don't show any signs of wear and tear, and she seems to believe she's been lost for just a few minutes, not 5 years. What happened to this little girl? Same thing. Did the same little girl emerge from the forest, or was something else going on? We've not yet got an answer to that question. And as mentioned earlier, there's a clearing located in the center of the woods. Got no vegetation growing in it, yet the soil tests come back normal. One paranormal investigator was sitting in this clearing and he was scratched and pushed down to the ground. Photos taken around this so-called dead zone often revealed human shapes and forms that are not visible to the naked eye. A lot of locals claim this clearing is the hub of the supernatural activity taking place in the forest, and quite possibly the spirits roaming within it. So imagine you're traveling through the forest in the late evening, not too long before the sun sets. You turn a corner, you can see a long stretch of path in front of you. You start down that path, see something that makes you blink. The shape of a tall man comprised of black smoke. Startled, you stare for a moment, at least until it begins to drift towards you. One of the legends associated with this forest concerns the ghost of Romanian peasants who were apparently murdered inside the forest. And while many ghosts seem to manifest as a white or light-colored mist, these enraged ghosts often make themselves known to visitors as a black fog. Others have seen multiple pairs of glowing green eyes peering and watching from between the trees. And this, of course, is usually accompanied by a sense of danger and anxiety. And beyond the UFO sightings associated with the forest, there have been numerous reports of glowing orbs of light. Such glowing orbs are often associated with paranormal manifestations and may be either seen as with the naked eye or caught on camera. Balls of light have been seen suspended about 4 feet off the ground. They fly into the path of visitors. They'll stop and hover for a moment as if looking over or assessing whether the person is a threat before disappearing into the tree-lined path. Some of the spookiest things about visitors' reports are sounds in the forest that don't seem to have a source. These types of sounds are extremely varied, from children giggling to whispering voices to female screams. This happens both at night and in the daytime, and attempts to find out where the sounds come from have always been unsuccessful. The most disturbing, though, is the sound of somebody you can't see whispering in your ear. You may not understand the words of the language, but you can certainly discern the malicious intent. And there are quite a few things you might encounter if you choose to visit this forest, including the glowing green eyes, disembodied heads floating through the trees, mysterious voices and whispers and orbs of light. And if you're fortunate, you won't experience any lost time, amnesia, or symptoms of illness, but ask yourself, what can you expect from the Bermuda Triangle, Transylvania? Well, from Transylvania, let's go to Illinois. Robinson Woods. To all appearances, this wooded area near Chicago looks like a typical forest preserve filled with trees and plants and wildlife. You might notice a large marker for Alexander Robinson, the namesake of the forest, but also the very fragrant smell of lilacs, even in the dead of winter. Now, Robinson Woods was named for Alexander Robinson, better known as the Potawatomi, Chippewa, and Ottawa Nation of Indians, as Chief Chi-Chi-Pinquay. Native American name means blinking eyes, was given to him because of a facial tic over which he had no control. His father was believed to be a British officer, his mother an Ottawa woman. Early 1800s, he was given a large tract of land now known as the Robinson Woods in appreciation for his positive relations and influence on behalf of the Native American people. The land was later purchased by the Forest Preserve District, and out of respect for Robinson, allowed to remain in the Robinson house rent-free. Allocated an acre of land. Robinson family members lived on this land in 1955 when a fire forced them to relocate. And several members of the family are actually buried on the land. October that same year, 3 boys, 11, 13, and 14, were discovered naked in a ditch neighboring the woods. All 3 had been strangled, and one had been severely beaten in the head with either a tire iron or the butt of a pistol. It was just too much damage for the medical examiner to be sure. Father, one boy died of a heart attack not long after the murders. The murderer wasn't caught for about 40 years. He was tried for the boy's murder and found guilty. His name was Kenneth Hansen, sentenced to over 200 years in prison and died while incarcerated. It wasn't long after the boy's brutal murder that strange things began to happen in the Robinson Woods. Witnesses to strange happenings in the woods crosses a wide swath of society. Logical policemen, local residents, daily joggers, experienced paranormal investigators, and of course, tourists who have all experienced unnatural activity in Robinson Woods. In the 1970s, paranormal researchers were recorded near Alexander Robinson's grave. While listening to the recording later, they noticed a deep sound with a definite rhythm to it. After hearing it a few times, there's only one conclusion they could come to. It was the beating of Native American drums. It would seem that although the Robinson Woods is not a forest preserve, the Native Americans inhabiting it for hundreds of years hadn't left it yet. Others have clearly heard the repetitive echoing sounds of an axe chopping down a tree. Unlike the drumming sound captured on a recorder, this sound doesn't follow an exact rhythm. Those who've heard it proceed to see if they could find its source in the forest preserve, but the elusive axe man has never been located, nor have any man-made tree stumps been found. Over the last 20 years, which would correspond to the time after Kenneth Hansen's murder, another interesting phenomenon started. Near a large boulder beside the walking trail, lights suspended in the air. As witnesses strain to see the source of the lights in the surrounding forest, the lights vanish. None of the folks visiting that area have seen these mysterious lights. The fact they first appeared around the time Hansen was arrested for the murders might suggest it had something to do with his 3 young victims. The trail leads to the Des River, which was where the boys' bodies were found, about 100 feet east of the river. The possible explanation behind these mysterious lights is the Robinson family. For many years they lived on that land. They'd transport water back to their farm from the river along this path. If this were done at night, family members would light the way with torches. Maybe the lights or torches still shining after all these years. And some visitors to the Robinson Woods claim while walking around listening to birds' calls and the crunch of leaves on the path, an unusual floral scent lingers. Smell of fresh lilacs. No way any flower could be alive in the middle of winter, or no way have any lilacs been seen. But that smell emanates from the area in which the boulder marks where the Robinson family is buried. You know, Chicago might not be where you'd expect to find a haunted forest complete with the graves of Native Americans, but Robinson Woods is all that and more. Day or night, you're likely to encounter something mysterious in these woods, whether it's an inexplicable sound, enigmatic lights, or even a strong smell of ghostly lilacs. You might go check it out for yourself. And on that note, coming into today's show, we'll be back tomorrow, and once again, we'll be talking about stories that are strange and unusual. Until then, Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.